Well, this project has been a long time coming. It's both exciting and scary. If by some chance you're just joining our channel, this is the first video that you're running into, jump way back. We're working on these cabinets. These cabinets were a pretty big undertaking for us. We've never built them before, and we built them all from scratch. So we've got this installed around Christmas, which was probably the best gift we could give ourselves. It was a huge life upgrade for us. We used to have just a very basic utility sink here, and we had kind of exposed framing. We got this all buttoned up. The cabinets turned out fantastic. They've been a wonderful blessing, and we've been enjoying having kind of our first little bit of luxury in our home. Originally, we had planned on doing a stainless steel top and a stainless steel backsplash. This is actually kind of a laundry area. We've got our washer and dryer there. We use this area primarily for food prep and laundry tasks. We do a lot of our own food preservation and gardening and things, and we need a big place with a big sink to do canning and meat and all that kind of thing. We thought originally that this would be better off a one-piece top, sink, and backsplash because it's much easier to clean up. Food prep is a huge mess, right? Anyway, here we are. We decided in the interest of time and materials to build this beautiful butcher block top, and we purchased a stainless steel deep sink, and we've been using this, and honestly we're loving it. It was kind of meant to be like, well, let's do that, and then if we don't like it, we'll change it. And I think what's happening is we're learning to like it a lot. So that said, it doesn't really make sense per se to do a solid stainless steel backsplash. Like I said, we were thinking about doing a one-piece thing. That way you could just bleach it from top to bottom and it's all good. So now we start the conversation about backsplashes. Something else I should mention about this project and a lot of the projects that we're working on right now is that they're really all practice projects as well. There's kind of another dimension. We still have all the big elements of our house to finish, our main kitchen, our main bathroom, and all those things. So each time we do a project like this, we're kind of doing practice on a small scale, partly to see what kind of materials we like, see how hard it is to do them, and then ultimately try to get good at it. That way when we get to the real house, the big house, we're kind of through the learning phase, the college time as we call it, and we can kind of do a better quality of work. So today we're going to be working on installing a tile backsplash for this, and it's going to be beautiful. Because we wanted a stainless steel look, it made sense to see if we could find a stainless steel product to do what we wanted to do. We looked around and we actually found stainless steel tiles. A lot of people use these as a decorative feature, but obviously they can work well in a kitchen application too. So we purchased these with a hardy board backer on them. There's a bit of a learning curve to this stuff. We probably should have ordered what they call fiber board or something like that, or hardboard. There's another term for it. We're gonna have to be using some trim because of the exposed edge here. The other backer that they offer actually is concealed by this fully formed factory edge. Unfortunately, this one sticks out behind. So we're gonna have to trim out on one side, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Anyway, this is a beautiful stainless steel tile. It's 2.5 inches by 6 inches. And we're going to be doing a subway tile pattern. There's a lot going on here, but first let's just talk about the tile pattern. So this is what they call a subway pattern, if you're not familiar with that. And this is what we've decided we like. We decided not to go with a herringbone or something like that. So the other thing that's happening here is we're going to be using a tile leveling system to ensure that our faces on these tiles are nice and smooth. Part of the reason that we installed HardieBacker, which is layered, but the primary reason, my motivator for that, was over here by this outlet. We actually have a stud in that wall that's sticking out a little bit. And it's got an unevenness in the drywall, the gypsum behind there. I guess that's a lesson I needed to learn to make sure that all that stuff is true, or to shim the sheetrock or something at that stage, because dealing with it at this stage kind of sucks. So my thinking was, if we could get this hardy board to lay flat, we may be able to avoid the complexity of this leveling system. Unfortunately, I've run the level on here at different angles And I'll say it's okay, but I don't know that it's flat enough for the tile. I'm probably being way too fussy here, but unfortunately with so much of this stuff, we don't know what we don't know. So we tend to be a little bit overly anal to ensure that the final product turns out the way we want. I find a lot of people who build tend to be wingers instead of planners, and the net effect is everything is scribe fit. When you get to a problem, you just kind of scribe fit around it and then you keep on going. And that works for some people, but we're trying not to do that with this house. We're trying to do what we perceive to be quality workmanship, which takes time and it takes patience. So this system is going to take some extra time, some extra cost, and a lot of patience. But we think versus just gluing the tile to the HardieBacker and letting it be what it'll be, hopefully we'll get a much better finish. So this leveling system is basically a clip, which is this white part. It has some bent little ears on the bottom that grab onto the tile, and then a ratcheting wedge on the top. And as you ratchet this wedge tighter, obviously, it references the two tiles to create a even surface. This is one of the reasons that we use mortar behind tile, is to take up unevenness in the floor. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but this is one of those reasons. If we were just to glue these tiles to the wall, they probably would be just fine. This is going to add a little bit more work, and we're going to need a little bit deeper mortar bed. But in the end, we feel like this is going to be a more satisfying end product. There's a term for when tiles are not even with each other. It's called lippage. And it's not really a problem on a wall per se, other than it creates cleaning issues and it's unsightly. Otherwise, it's not a big deal. On a floor, lippage would be a tripping hazard, and it also can get damaged. Like if you're running your vacuum cleaner over it, it could chip the edge of the tile. So lippage is highly undesirable on a floor. And then of course you get all the cleaning issues that come with it also. So this leveling system is probably more apropos for a floor than a wall, but hopefully taking the time to learn with this, when we get upstairs and we think about doing tile on the floor up there, we'll have had a little bit of practice with it, so when it's kind of game day or showtime, we won't be fumbling around trying to figure it out. The next question is, how the heck do you cut a stainless steel tile? The manufacturer says that a tile saw is actually the most desirable because it runs cool. It's got a wet blade, and that will actually keep the stainless steel from discoloring. We are apparently able to cut this with an angle grinder or a bandsaw. I'm not sure how ornate this is going to be, because obviously we've got to get around these outlets and trim around these corners here. So there's going to be probably going to be some tile here that are going to have some major surgery. We'll have to try this saw. At this point, I don't know how well it's going to work, but we'll give it a shot, and hopefully it will do what we need it to do, and it'll also be nice and clean so that we don't have any burn marks or discoloration anywhere around where we're cutting. You can see this small gap behind the HardieBacker, and that really represents the high spot in the wall right here. This HardieBacker is somewhat angling away from the wall, but so is the lower set of cabinets for the same reason. It's hitting that high spot, so it's actually kind of angling this way. It's only about 3/16 of an inch. I'm not really proud of that, but I think this is also part of finished carpentry and learning to deal with mistakes that the other trades make. Unfortunately, we are the other trade, so we can't blame anybody but ourselves. We're going to be trimming this out for a lot of reasons. One, to protect this corner, and then obviously the HardieBacker is going to be exposed over here, as well as this edge of this tile. So we didn't really have an option to trim over here, and therefore it's not really that big of a deal that this is standing off the wall ever so slightly. The manufacturer of this tile product actually recommends the Loctite polyurethane adhesive that I used behind this Hardie board for installing these tiles. They say that's actually perfectly fine, and I have to agree, it's pretty durable stuff. We've used that all over this house. It's very durable, water resistant, all that stuff. But in order to get a good even tile set, we're gonna actually use a proper thin set or adhesive to put this tile down. I feel like that Loctite stuff is just annoying to work with. If you've ever used it, it's really hard to clean up, it's really hard to move around. It's really hard to explain, but if you've ever tried it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So we just purchased some tile adhesive, and we should be able to get this on with a trowel, and it should be fairly easy to set the tile. The other nice thing about this is we got it locally, and therefore we can get more if we run low. This is the grout product that we're going to be using, and the reason I want to mention it now is it's actually labeled as a mortar also. From what I understand, it would be ideal to use the same product for a mortar and a grout. That way, if there's anything that comes out between the tiles as you're bedding or setting those tiles, it's not a big deal because it's the same product that you're going to be grouting with. Unfortunately, because we're mortaring with a different product, we'll need to be attentive to anything that comes through between the tiles and make sure it gets cleaned out. That way, when we're ready to grout, we can use the right product. The other thing that made me steer away from this as a mortar is it's a 2-part epoxy product, and the operation window is only about 1 hour, which is by no means enough time for me, a total novice, to get all of this tiled. So I think it makes sense, even though this is labeled and they encourage you to use it and there are benefits to using it as the mortar and the grout, I decided to steer clear of this for this project. We've decided to go with a very conservative 1/16 inch grout line on these tiles. They do not require grout. They're not a porcelain or ceramic tile, so we don't need that cushion between the tiles. But because it's a backsplash and we're going to be doing a lot of food preparation on here, what we don't want is a bunch of gunk getting between those tiles. So we've decided to use grout as a safety measure. All the hard stuff is done. We're also about to find out whether when I get to the top here, we've got a nice tidy installation. Boy, oh boy, no pressure, no pressure. Are we really gonna be able to end this on a full tile? No. Are you kidding me? No way. We're gonna get away with a full tile at the top? Yes. Well, it's been a couple of days since we did the tile setting. The instructions on the adhesive were 24 to 72 hours before grouting, and I don't want to risk ruining this project. I don't know that it really needed that long, but we'll just trust the instructions and go with it. So I wanted to catch up on a couple things that we decided to skip on the previous process. You guys probably already picked up on it, but I wanted to maybe just share a little bit why. So remember the tile leveling clips that we had? Yeah, they didn't work. They were making a train wreck of this thing from like the third tile. So it was the curve on the clip that was creating the problem. Actually, it's kind of funny. Now that I'm sitting here looking at this, I think I just figured out why I was having problems. So what would happen is this end tile here would kick up, and it was trying to bend up because there was nothing out here. There's no end tile to help to keep it in place. And so this end tile is trying to pucker up and making an absolute mess. Well, now that I'm kind of sitting here looking at this for 1 second, I realized that what's keeping this from doing that is this clip here. So I had originally set up one row of tile. I put these clips in place, and this tile right here just wanted to bend up like crazy. And I guess I'm seeing now that if I would have put a second row on and attached a clip here and here maybe, I guess I'm admitting on camera that maybe this would have gone a little bit differently. But early on I was super frustrated with this process, and I was just super paranoid about screwing it up and getting, 2 or 3 rows in, and then boom, the whole thing just falls apart. So I guess I'm just sharing that we abandoned this system after 1 row. And I guess the other thing that I wanted to share is they make the flat clip version of this that doesn't have the curve on the back of that little clip right there. And I think that if I'd had those clips, I probably wouldn't have abandoned this. That's more just a matter of impatience, and I guess I'm hoping that it was a good decision. Something else I learned pretty quickly is that I cannot really set tile as fast as I could trowel the adhesive onto the wall. And it made more sense, I think, after a couple of rows to just stop doing it that way and instead to apply the adhesive to the back of the tile. I think they call it like back buttering or something like that. Anyway, I used that method and it worked a lot better. You can apply it directly to the tile. You get a much more uniform application. Is that a good idea? I have no idea, but I did it and it seems to have worked, at least on this project. If you were gonna do really big tile, that process might not work very good, but on these little tiles that were about handhold size, it actually worked pretty well. Cutting around all of these outlets and fixtures wasn't as bad as I expected. The tile saw did a fantastic job, but it definitely left a burr on the edge of the tile, and so I had to use a reaming tool to remove that. This tile was probably one of the most complicated because it actually spans an entire outlet. I had to use the grinder here, and the grinder really didn't discolor this as bad as I thought it would. It definitely melted the plastic protector, but the tile doesn't seem to have much discoloration at all. And having to actually do that type of a cut, I wasn't certain. I feel pretty good about it. There's a couple other real tricky jigsaw type cuts here. I tried to be fairly tidy about, going around all of this cabinetry and things, and I feel like it all worked out. It definitely took some patience, but the stainless steel was a lot easier to cut and more forgiving than I expected. Here's an example of that burr that the tile saw left on the stainless steel part. It of course had no problem cutting the hardy backer portion, and it just left this little piece right here, very, very sharp, so it's very easy to cut yourself. And that deburring tool, once I could get underneath the burr, it left a beautiful edge, and there really wasn't that much room to screw it up. But getting that burr off there was a lot of work, and if you think about the number of tile that I had to cut, for each one of these things, it really amounted to a lot of deburring on all the detail stuff. I had the super frustrating decision, do I center the tile over the faucet here, or do I center the tile in this opening here? And I had to make a decision when I started, not really knowing how it would work out at the top. I actually feel super good with how this turned out, but it's about 1/4 of an inch, well, closer to 3/8 of an inch off center one direction. And I think that's okay. I think visually for me, I look at the faucet all the time. I'm not looking up here at the top. And so I wanted everything to look fairly good there. So I started in the middle and worked my way out. And these edges just ended up being whatever they're gonna be. So things are a little kind of cattywampus over here because these cabinets are not a uniform width, being a shorter on this side, longer over here. But I think once we trim that out and everything, this is kind of the visual center of this piece and it looks good. Because we were originally going to be using these leveling clips, they produce a 16th inch grout joint. So we didn't really need a tile spacer, but because I abandoned these, suddenly now I need something to space the tiles evenly for grouting. We had purchased these little star-shaped things, which are 16th inch spacers, and I don't know why, but they did not work. I could not get them to do their job. They just fell out constantly. I was super annoyed. So I ended up going to those rubber ones that I borrowed from a friend, and the nice thing is they're reusable, so you don't really have to throw them away. You could, in theory, have them for an entire lifetime. So we ended up switching to those rubberized ones. Were they perfect? No, but these things were totally junk. So hopefully we'll wrap this project up today. We've got to get all the caulking done and the grouting done. This is like Christmas, like 300 times. This is so fun. Read text message from Pookie Bear.
Wow. Would you like to reply?
Yes. Legit. Wait until you see the whole thing. Holy smokes, this looks amazing.
Ready to send it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's sent.
Greasy fingerprints. Well, that's what I was afraid of. So whatever material is in this grout, it must be some sort of a sand-like substance. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it definitely has the ability to scratch this stainless steel. So if we go absolutely bonkers with this grout and we end up having to scrub it off of there, I'm afraid that we're going to end up scratching the tile. So I'm going to do a little bit more testing with this tile, kind of trying to scratch it with this grout and then see what we come up with before we proceed. Looks really good to me. And the temptation is going to be to like scrub the tile. Don't scrub the tile. Are you having any like holidays or anything like where you can see through the grout?
There's been a couple spots where I've tried to like move the grout on the gut. good from a distance. I think we saved it, huh?
Yeah, right. Sucked. Okay, moment of truth. Wait. What do you think? Do you think it hardened up overnight, or do you think we're completely screwed right now?
I think it hardened.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. Do you?
You're such an optimist. I'm such a pessimist. I have no faith in building products
Right?
at all.
Well,
Okay.
we already had a hard time on this, so.
Moment of
can I
truth.
touch?
Yeah, let's push your finger into it. Is it?
It's hard.
No way.
Yeah.
So I just knew the second I mixed this stuff and stuck it in the grout bag, I was so hosed. And I was like, mayday, mayday, mayday. I needed Alyssa's help. The epoxy says it has a 1 hour workable time. And we learned that lesson from this butcher block countertop. We did a video on that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But we learned a whole lot about epoxy. The second I put that stuff in the grout bag, I'm like, oh, this is gonna go really bad. So Alyssa jumped in and saved my bacon, and she kind of followed behind me getting the grout lines cleaned up. But when we were all done, we still didn't know whether I had mixed the epoxy correctly, which was one of the lessons we learned on the countertop. If you don't get the catalyst mixed into the resin, I think is what it is, well, you'll just sit there and wait for several days and then it never hardens up. But after about 3 hours, the box says 1 hour workable time, we were still able to touch this and manipulate it, which didn't make me feel very good. But I got out of bed this morning and the first thing I checked was the grout bag, and oh yeah, grout bag's hard as a rock. So that made me feel better, but I still didn't know if we were gonna get away with it over here. So in case you're curious, no, we've never used a grout bag before, and the grout definitely wanted to scratch the tile, which made me super nervous. So we tried to make some sort of little adapter thingamajigger for this grout bag so that we could put the grout right into the grout joint. And I'll just admit right now, it was really stupid. I found out that I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the grout bag, when you buy them, is actually folded in half. And after, what, about 80% of this ridiculousness, I finally gave up because I couldn't get the grout to come out the little adapter thing we made. So I threw it away, and it turns out that this grout bag is actually, I think, designed to fit into the grout joint. And then you can just squeeze and turn and away it goes. So, but I didn't figure that out until about 80% of the way through, when it's like mayday, mayday, mayday situation. So I thought I'd share that in case someone else out there has the misfortune of buying a grout bag and doesn't know how they work like we do.
So all said and done, are you happy with how it turned out?
I am. But you wouldn't have known that last night, because I was really mad. I was like, this is all gonna fall apart right now. So this morning, I think it looks beautiful. I think both of us were like unsure about whether to grout, but we didn't really have an option being a backsplash, so I think it looks beautiful.
I think we both have this idea in our mind, like we know that interior designers are worth something a lot, and we're not interior designers. It's one thing to go to Pinterest and find a kitchen and a house that you like. It's another thing to build said house, and you can't copy something exactly. So we kind of decided on the style cabinets we want, and we thought about the backsplash we want and the hardware we wanted, and I think we're both shocked that it turned out how we wanted, right?
This definitely was a case of like the brochure kind of got us a little bit kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, that's super beautiful. We could totally, oh crap. So I think we actually got by the skin of our teeth a beautiful backsplash. That was close.
And despite having so many other things to work on, we felt that working on this was nice to give us a taste of what our final home could look like.
It's one thing to have a vision, and it's another thing to realize that. And so while this isn't much really in the context of this big house, it's something, and we made it. We actually envisioned the whole thing, we built it from the ground up, and now we have it. And we're okay with this whole house taking a long time. We're not trying to build a cracker box house that's slapped together with cheap, low quality materials in a hurry. That's not what we're trying to achieve, and this goes in line with that. And it's nice to have a preview of what we can build. We were not 100% sure we could build this. I think that's safe to say, but it's real and it's here. And so now we have the inspiration to continue.
We don't want to feel like we need art to decorate our house. Our house is the art. This is art. I think we saved it, huh?
Yeah, right? Sucked. Not fun.
We've had a lot of those moments. In a pinch, I can bail you out.
Yep.